Hello, Edison residents and Metuchen and Woodbridge. Hello, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. Chris here from Edison Now. Thanks so much for supporting us and tuning in again. We try to bring you all up to date and the news that's fit to print all around our town of Edison and surrounding areas. So just want to introduce to you, everybody, my special guest tonight. I have Edison Councilman Sam Joshi and the Democratic nominee for mayor this upcoming election cycle. Thank you so much for joining me, Sam. How's everything?
Chris, Edison Now, and Anthony, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to a robust conversation with you. You feel free to pick my brain as much as you'd like.
Oh, no problem. No problem. And we talked a little bit earlier. There's actually a couple more things that I could actually anticipate asking Sam after all this stuff. So I asked him kindly if he would potentially consider coming back and talking with me, but anyway, for another time, but we're here, and there's some questions that a lot of people have concerning the town, how the town operates, the ins and outs, the gears that turn. So to start off with, would you mind giving the viewers some kind of background as to, the difference between the planning and the zoning board and potentially how they fit, how they work together?
Sure. Similar boards, but they're different because of the applications that get brought before them and what type of decisions that they make. The difference between the planning and zoning board is that the planning is for applications that are within permitted use. So if an applicant wants to build a residential home and it's in a area that is also permitted use for a residential home, and it fits within the lot means requirement, it's going to go to the planning board. Right. Similarly, for a commercial building, same thing. If it's a retail space and they want to go within the confines of what is permitted, it's going to go to the planning board. The difference between the planning and the zoning board is that the zoning board is the exact opposite. So,
interesting.
Yeah, the zoning board is the Zoning Board of Adjustment. That's the full title of the board. And it specifically hears applications and reviews applications for which an applicant wants to alter the zoning or the permitted use.
Okay, hence the word adjustment.
Yes.
That's okay. Okay.
Yes.
Excellent.
So, unfortunately, what comes out of this is people will go before the zoning board and they're always asking for things that are just not fitting that zone. Obviously, that's the purpose of the board. That also means that, the most common question that I get asked is, why is something even being heard? If something is such a preposterous,
right?
Something,
right? Exactly. And I think a lot of people ask this question because to them, from an outsider looking in, they should be like, well, this should be dead on arrival.
Yeah.
Because of maybe some certain things that, or certain variances or certain requests that, might be coming in from, whoever potentially wants to do whatever with this property. So right. So that's why they come to the board is, because some of these requests lie outside what's permissible.
Yes,
correct?
Exactly. And so the most common question that I get is, why is something being heard? And the reality is that anyone is allowed to go before a board and request to be heard.
Right.
The problem is that, so Chris, for example, if you wanted to take your house and you wanted to knock it down and your proposal as an applicant was to build a skyscraper larger than the Empire State Building, you have the full right to be heard 100%. You can bring all your attorneys and engineers and architects, your traffic people, and the zoning board has to hear your entire application.
Interesting. So it doesn't matter how outlandish or how preposterous this proposal might be. Yes. I have the right to. That's interesting.
If you want to make a landing strip for a plane, and that's your crazy proposal, you can go before the zoning board and be heard 100%.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. so everybody that might answer a lot of questions that you might have as to why certain things get heard. Well, actually, in what you're telling me, everything has the right to get heard.
Correct.
So what about jurisdictions? overstepping one another? Are there bounds? Are there legal bounds? What type of boundaries are there for distinguishing what the role is for one or another? Are there anything that overlap, or are they completely, or are all the roles and duties separate?
So the zoning board essentially acts as a set of judges. That's the way that, and I've, as a previous member of the zoning board for 2 years, and the courses that I also took for zoning, this is what they teach us in the League of Municipalities. This is what they teach us in our courses. That when you serve on the zoning board, you have to be 100% objective. And as a zoning board member, you should also not be stating your opinion unless you're asking questions at the hearing itself, because you're essentially acting as a judge. So you have to hear out whatever the applicant says, as well as the other side of the issue too. If people are opposed to it, they have the right to be heard. So as long as it's not redundant or repetitive, which is controversial because sometimes people may not want to repeat themselves, or even if it's something that is not being repetitive, a chairperson may make an error in judgment and assuming that everyone was going to say the same thing. So just to get back to it, the jurisdiction it's very different. The planning board and zoning board have two totally different functions. The zoning board is appointed by the council, and the planning board is appointed by the mayor. It's just a check and balance that way. And when you're on the zoning board, contrary to what people want to hear, elected officials are not supposed to be intervening on an opinion or weighing in on an opinion publicly with an applicant. And that's because should an application want to appeal, if let's just say you wanted to build your skyscraper and you got denied. If you got denied, then it's dead on arrival. If to the council, if you wanted to build a skyscraper and then a zoning board says, yes, Chris can have a skyscraper, and any party that wants to appeal it, they have the right to be heard. They just have to submit the request to the clerk's office, the municipal clerk's office.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is an appeal process to the zoning board.
It's a one-page appeal application. It's quite simple.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I think people like simple. Yeah, that's good.
And you have to submit it within 10 days. And it gets appealed to the council. And for that reason, the council is supposed to remain objective, because what would happen in process is the zoning board would then send all their transcripts and everything that they heard, their whole case would basically be sent over to the council.
Right.
And then we have to then weigh our opinion and decide whether we want to uphold it, change the zoning. Any error that we feel that the zoning board made in judgment, we're allowed to make that decision then.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now, let's talk about rendering a decision. What are the different aspects that are taken into consideration when a board says, okay, yes, you can do this, or no, you can't? So for instance, they go to the zoning board, they want to do something that lies outside of what's permissible for a certain lot.
Yeah.
In a certain zone, a certain size, right? There are certain boundaries, whether it's zoning or size, rather, that will restrict somebody they could do something. As a member of the zoning board, what do you take into, or what does the board collectively take into consideration when rendering a decision?
So the way that this ties into the master plan.
Okay. Good.
Zoning board and the planning board and the council, our governing body, we are supposed to look at how we make our decisions based off of what fits and what does not fit within our master plan. The master plan is a blueprint, not just for now, but for a decade, 2 decades down the road.
Sure. Right.
And you have to make sure that you're consistent with the master plan, because that's what gauges, whether you have 1,000. If the township knew collectively that our master plan says that over the course of the next 10 years, we're going to have an increase of approximately 1,000 residents. If that's what the master plan says, then we can strategically approve or deny alter application requests based off of what our guidance is in our master plan. The problem that we're having is that our master plan is supposed to be reviewed every 10 years.
Right.
And instead of doing a full master plan review and completely redoing all of it, the last one was just an update. And it was a certain chapter that was picked off and it was updated. And the problem that's come with that, as it pertains to not just residential communities, retail, or light industrial, is that we have not had a new master plan in the last 30 years. So, and there are so many overlays in zones that there's, because these overlays, there's the opportunity for whether it be developers, builders, or, residential applications, just people that want to do business, they have so much room to do more because we have not laid our foot down as a municipality saying, this is our new master plan.
Right.
And this is where, we're standing by this master plan.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And from what the master plan that I looked at had a date of 2003, and it wasn't that long ago that I looked at it. Would that mean that was the last time the plan was updated? That's not a revision date, is it?
That was a revised version update.
A revised version.
Yeah, that was like a few chapters and a few pages were updated. We have not actually redone the whole master plan in over 30 years, more than I've been alive.
Okay, right. Now, is that on the radar to be completed, to be done? Okay. Because
every 10 years it's supposed to. So that's something that we immediately need to do. I mean, that's one of my main... I want to hit the ground running doing that right away on day one of my administration. Make sure that we have a full master plan review committee. Make sure that we have input from all neighborhoods across the entire town.
Right.
Making sure that the input is justified in terms of what we need now as well as our trajectory long term. But that's the way that you can fill the needs of the requirement into how to fill Edison Township for the future.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So there are a couple instances going on right now with proposed building or development rather, in the town. One of them, there's two that have garnered a lot of attention, are the Silver Lake area down in the Silver Lake section, the warehouse there, as well as the 23 townhomes at Charlie Brown's. I think from the people that I've heard of, one of the biggest concerns with this, and now you said every case deserves to be heard in front of the board. That's why it's being entertained.
Yes.
Absolutely. But I think one of the biggest concerns out there is that and please correct me if I'm wrong with any of this, that the zoning of the land from golf course to something else that would allow multi-unit residencies would actually set quite a precedent for other things to be done in the town. So I guess what I'm thinking out loud here, but what I'm trying to get at is when I asked what do you take into consideration, right? When you have a first of its kind like this, or maybe there's been others, maybe there already is precedent, but how heavy is that taken into consideration? So there's, from what I hear, 20 variances. Are some variances more important to look at than others?
No. So, contrary to what's being said or what is assumed, when it comes to zoning board issues, precedence is not applicable because every application is supposed to be looked at individually, not being considered with others, or what has been done in the past. Every application is supposed to be 100%. You're looking at it fresh. There's no precedent that's set. So there's no advantage that any applicant gets because what is always paramount to everything is what's in the master plan.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Makes sense. Now, that might be the case going in front of zoning, but when it comes time to an appeal a decision, does precedent have much more weight then than it does going before a zoning board?
No. If it's up to an appeal, then you still look at what the master plan is. That's the guidance by which council members have to decide
Right.
what they want to do. But it's different because council members are elected officials, whereas planning and zoning board members are appointed. So
Right.
they're more confined with in that regard, whereas a council member can go out, stating their opinion once it's in front of them. They can also explain why they did or did not support something, and it could be. I mean, it's up to the council member on explaining themselves.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. So, like I'd point out, we have two of these instances going on, and we have developers that would they propose they want to do something with the lot. Residents, once they hear about it, they're like, well, what's going on here? This is not in our best interest. One thing I kind of want to talk to you about is how people are brought aware to these scenarios.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know if anything has changed, but I know going back to maybe 2008, 2009 or so, when you're requesting a variance, you would have to do like a certified mail to, people within 200 feet of your property. And then I'm not sure if it was, and or take out a little section in a newspaper to make the announcement. Okay. Nobody really looks at newspapers these days. I think people are aggravated. And this is just what I see, everybody. I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. I think people are aggravated because once they find out about these things, like my three guests last week were mentioning about Charlie Brown's, once they found out, they really only had 10 days to get things together and to create a good case, a good fact-based case as to why these 23 townhomes should not be put onto a 2-acre property. Mm-hmm. That's not even zoned for that. I would say, as an official in the town, do you think that maybe the avenues that are used to make people aware of what's going on should be maybe revised themselves?
100%. They're completely outdated.
Okay.
And I had this frustration when I was on the zoning board as well, because when we hear applications, obviously, you want to side with what the people of the town, the taxpayers, want to do. You want to. But there's also a set of laws, even though they're archaic, right? So people are, and I don't want to speak on behalf of current zoning board members, but I'm telling you from my experience as a previous one, you're caught in the middle. And the reality is that 200 feet is just an archaic, completely outdated law. It has to be expanded, and I fully support that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to ask this question anyway.
Sure.
In terms of Edison, we have two other towns, a large one, hence Woodbridge Township, and a smaller one, Metuchen, where, decisions that they make for development could very well affect us. There's plans with the Metro Park train station
Yes.
To put a large number of residential units on that piece of property. I would like to know where the commuters are going to park, but I haven't seen any plans. But also, too, you also have a lot of development going on around a small town, Metuchen. Mm-hmm. So all the development impacts them as well.
Yep.
So as a board, do you take other municipalities, the situation, like as a more of a macro situation into account when rendering decisions?
Do we decide? So the question is, would we look at what has happened in another town and then decide, or are you specifically asking for when there's an impact? So,
actually, so let's kind of go back to that.
Okay.
Are there impact assessments that are done per case, or is that something that's not done?
We've had a number of development projects that have come out of Edison, and likewise from Highland Park or Metuchen, things that other towns want to do around our borders, where we will be notified.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or like our residents will be notified in one way or another. We are made aware.
Okay, you were made aware.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be
only when it's along the border, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Only when it's along the border. Mm-hmm. Okay, but there are things that could potentially impact us just right across the border.
Yes.
So traffic wise and
in that case, we would not be aware unless someone brought it to our attention. Specifically went out of the way to bring it to our attention.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's nothing written anywhere saying that needs to be done. It would just be, if anything, it would just be a courtesy.
Yeah. So If
Okay.
it's if it's greater than 200 feet and it's not within the border of Edison, then we wouldn't know about it unless someone went out of their way to bring it to our attention.
Right. Gotcha. Understood. So, going to switch gears a little bit. You're also running for mayor. I know that you mentioned the master plan would be one of the things you're going to hit the ground running with.
Yes.
What are some other things that you envision? Let's say the first, you're elected mayor. Let's just say first 100 days. What are the things that are really high in your priority chart that you would like to address?
Sure. So let me just expand a little bit more on the master plan and why it's so important.
Sure. Absolutely. Please do.
I can't express enough how important it is from a planning and public policies perspective, how important the master plan is. What it does is it's not just a blueprint for zoning requirements, but it also lays the foundation for how we're going to improve our quality of life in town, where our trajectory is going to be. If we knew, for example, I'll go back to the example of saying that if we knew within 10 years we're going to have another 1,000 residents, then you can plan, the Board of Education can also plan that way proportionately. That's also the way that we lay our economy out over the next, we're coming out of a global pandemic.
Yes.
That we're at the tail end of it. We're back to freedom, and we're able to acknowledge the fact that everything has become very technologically oriented. And
yes. Fair.
Internet revolves and surrounds every single part of our lives. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to go anywhere without it.
Right.
And if there's one thing that we've learned, it's that we have to make sure that the type of economy that we're going to build locally is specifically tailored to that future. So when you have a master plan,
sure.
We have the opportunity here to really assess something that's different from most municipalities. All the mayors and elected officials that I speak to throughout the entire state of New Jersey, all my colleagues, Edison is in a very unique position because typically mayors will reach out to light industrial. When it comes to planning, they have either light industrial, residential, or retail. Those are the three types of growth development projects that you can have in town.
Okay.
Retail, light industrial, or residential. None of which, at this point, from most neighborhoods within Edison Township, although those are the three that you pick from, throughout Edison, people don't want either of them. That's just the truth.
Okay.
But what's extremely unique is that we don't have to subscribe to soliciting to those three.
Okay.
Edison is in a unique position because we can turn to our partners and we can turn to our assets that we have, which are Middlesex County College, mm-hmm. Rutgers, which is right around the corner,
sure.
Robert Wood Johnson, which is right around the corner, and Hackensack Meridian. All four of these campuses are actively looking to expand. Okay. I've spoken to the Board of Governors and the trustees on all four of these institutions, and all of them are actively looking to expand their campuses.
Interesting. Okay.
And what we are uniquely positioned in is having the ability to solicit them and making sure that they expand their campuses within Edison Township. And if they do that, the good part is that we would be able to strategically build, and this is where it ties back to the master plan, instead of having a warehouse come to town, right? We can build a local economy that we're proud of, very proud of, around these satellite campuses.
Sure. Makes sense.
That is the difference between having a master plan that is tailored towards, the future, not just now, but also towards the future, because then you can fill these spots.
Right.
And that's why it's extremely important to have a long-term sustainable master plan that's not just focused, that's not just focused on what's going to be zoned where, but rather, what kind of economy do we want to have? Where do we want to have our children go to school? Where do we want to have our children compete in an economy? What type of jobs do we want them to have?
Sure.
Or in terms of proximity to. So these are the type of things that a master plan looks at holistically, and that's why I'm excited to work on a master plan. It typically takes about a year and a half to even get to that point where you've completely rewritten every single aspect of the town, making sure that you've highlighted what we're going to have in the future and what we're not going to have. Having said that, like I said, a master plan ties into the economy. I'm extremely excited about municipal broadband.
Yes,
because
you are. Yeah.
Because, and we can have this extensive conversation another time. I'm very,
I'm gonna pause you right there. I actually spoke with Sam about this. I'm gonna kindly ask him to come back and have a more in-depth conversation about municipal broadband, because I have a lot of curiosity questions, engineering questions, property ownership questions, technology, infrastructure questions, that I would like to understand myself.
Yep.
There's a couple of other municipalities that already have municipal broadband, correct?
There's over 500 municipalities in the United States that have municipal broadband. And the beauty of it is that, one, you get an alternative provider, but two, people are always asking, what about taxes? What about taxes?
Right.
Municipal broadband has the ability and would, in Edison Township, if we do it under my plan, it would be the second largest revenue generator outside of property taxes, which would directly offset higher property taxes and can directly pay for pet projects that we want to accomplish around the town.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I would love to have a segment dedicated to that.
I'm excited. Let's do it.
Okay, I say let's put we'll definitely get that on the calendar.
And I just want to stress, people, I get asked so many times, what about parks? What about other recreational sports, such as increasing soccer, increasing football? What about building, anything? I get asked all kinds of questions. What about doing things like this?
Right.
The reality is that all of it costs money. And in order to address all of the problems that we have in town, which, having served on the council, I could tell you that every neighborhood is unique in terms of specific issues that they have. There's general overlying issues that we're all faced with, Optimum being one of them.
Right.
But there's also neighborhood-centric issues. For example, Amazon and Topgolf neighborhoods, they have problems that are very unique that other parts of town otherwise would not understand.
Absolutely.
But in order to address every single problem, you have to look at, what specifically each neighborhood needs. And in order to address all of the projects that we need to accomplish, there's a tremendous amount of money that we need to raise. And we can't do it through, we would not be able to do it by simply cutting costs. We don't have the ability to cut to the point where all of our other problems are fixed. We have to raise revenue. And that's where municipal broadband becomes extremely relevant, because then you're not focused on taxation. You're drawing a whole new revenue base. Optimum right now is taking, and I don't want to go into too much, but Optimum is taking $139 per month from the average resident. They are taking $25 million per year from Edison residents. So as a corporation, they're taking $25 million, and we're getting awful service with it. It's, a terrible company with terrible service. If we were to set it up as an internet utility, then we have the ability to do a public-private partnership that can strategically pay for other things that we want to accomplish. You name a topic, and there's a way that municipal broadband, instead of paying for your Optimum bill, you can bring it in-house, and we can pay for a lot of pet projects around town. But that's the brief overview.
Yeah. No, thank you for that overview. I definitely appreciate it, because there's a lot of people I know that have questions about it, and I know a lot of people love to know more about that. Out of those 500, are any of those municipalities in Jersey yet?
No, we would be the first one.
We would be the first ones.
Yes.
Okay, makes sense. So, I would also like to give you the opportunity to clarify, to clarify some information that's going around that's being floating around that has to relate to your campaign about contributions.
Okay.
And builder contributions.
Okay.
Now I'm going to be full disclosure. I would like to have you clarify. So that's something that you're familiar with, correct? That's been circling around out there. That that there's been developer contributions to your campaign. Therefore, would it be any kind of possible conflict of interest between some of these townhouses going up? I want to please, if you don't, I would love to give you the opportunity to clarify that whole scenario.
Sure. So to clarify, there's this widespread rumor started by my opponent that I have taken contributions from builders, and the reason why it's being brought up is because I made a pledge, a conscious decision, that I was not going to be accepting any money from developers or builders at all whatsoever. To clarify, to date, since I have been an elected official since 2018,
right,
I have not accepted one dime, not a single penny, in a single contribution at all whatsoever from a builder or any developer. And it's important because what's being floated around, if you actually zoom in to the evidence that my opponent put forth, and I encourage people to look at it. If people zoom in on what my opponent brought up as evidence, I quote evidence, he's specifically saying since 2017. And he's also holding me accountable for what Phil Murphy raised.
Okay.
So on the flip side, I'm not going around saying Jack Citarelli took money from big tobacco companies.
Right.
And therefore Keith Hahn is, responsible for that. I'm not saying that.
Right. Understood.
Similarly, I'm not responsible for what other elected officials choose to take or not take. I can tell you with 100% confidence, you can go through my ELEC forms, you can go, and they're all there.
Mm-hmm.
I have not taken a single penny at all whatsoever since being an elected official since 2018 from any builder or developer. And what he is referring to in 2017, this is why he says since 2017, we had a joint political action committee. We had a joint fund. I was the new kid on the block, and Mayor Lenke, Alvaro Gomez, and Bob Deal, my running mates at the time, who were all veterans, they were responsible for fundraising into our PAC.
Okay.
And
sure.
As the new person, you're really not responsible for fundraising nearly as much as anybody else. So within the first few months, I decided that I was going to have my own PAC. So at the time, a total of $1,800 was raised in 2017. Again, $1,800 split between 3 different individuals. So that means that split ends up netting my portion of it, what I'm responsible for, would have been $600.
Okay.
So $1,800 in total. And again, if you look at the evidence that my opponent brought up, it's $1,800 split 3 ways. So it's $600 per person that was contributed in 2017.
Right.
I later made my own fund because I wanted to do my own thing. And
Sure.
most people will, if you've, anyone that's paid attention to the council meetings over the last few years, most people will quickly realize or know that I do my own thing in terms of what I believe is right. And I'm very different from, I'm the rebel on the council. So I go about doing things differently. And I'm okay with that. That's why I set up my own political action committee. And since then, I learned a lesson from those $600 that he's blowing up and inflating into $23,000. It started off as $200, then $1,200, then $14,000. Then I saw lawn signs that went to $20,000, and now I think it's like $30,000. It's being inflated, but it's, there's no truth to it at all.
Okay. No. Thanks for that clarification, because I know a lot of people, were looking for, a clarification about that whole, that whole scenario.
And you know what? I'm glad you asked me this, because the other very important aspect of this is it's not only about the contributions that you take in. It's also about your positions and how you stood on the issues.
True.
So
right. Exactly.
I have a record that I'm proud of in terms of consistently opposing overdevelopment, consistently siding with the residents when it comes to issues. When it comes time to making the right decision, I've sided with the residents.
Right.
I've done it, when it's appropriate. I've been there on the earliest side of the right side of an issue.
Right.
And when it comes to negotiation, I've also casted my votes appropriately in a way that I feel is best representing Edison Township. And I'm very proud of my record.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, Councilman Joshi, I want to thank you very much for coming on tonight and talking to anybody and getting the word out. Thank you very much, and I'd love to have you back.
Of course,
because like
we'll
I said,
talk about municipal broadband.
Yeah, broadband is definitely one of them. I got to admit, there's a lot of questions that I have. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Greatly
Thank
appreciate
you, Chris
it.
and Edison Now.
No,
and Anthony.
It's our pleasure. Our pleasure. And everybody, Edison Now, thanks so much for tuning in and watching. And as always, we appreciate your support. And once you see these videos, make some comments. Let us know what you think. All right. And if there's any topics that you want to hear, let me know, and I'll definitely try to make it happen. But anyway, I hope everybody is well. Be good, and as always, we'll see you on the flip side. Take care, everybody.